And we are live here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. What's up, everybody? This is Nick from P2W Fantasy on the first episode following a long break, long extended weekend. Great to be here with Ashley, and I guess it's okay that Anthony has joined the show as well today. It's been a while for him, so before we get into anything, we got a good episode today. I want to make sure that I introduce both guests, let them talk about themselves a little bit. We'll dive into some Scott Fish Bowl and some NFL news, and the bulk of this will be a My Guys episode, which we will get into. But to start things off, I'm welcoming back Anthony. He's been super busy finishing up his master's degree, still working on his new house. He got a brand new job. This guy's super busy. So Anthony, what's been up with you, man? I know you've had a lot going on, but you've also been pretty active with fantasy football and in that world. So what's up, man?
Yeah, I'm doing the best I can right now, but a lot, as you said, a lot going on with the new job, the house, finishing up my master's. I actually am done with that this week, so that's exciting. Hopefully everything slows down a little bit and can take some more time to enjoy everything. But Scott Fish Bowl is going on right now, so paying attention to that, getting back into the swing of things. Hopefully I could be a little bit more active, but it's good to be back.
Absolutely. And I know you and I have been talking about our drafts, and we'll get into that in a second here. But it's been like the bulk of our conversations lately. Also with us today, we have Ashley. And Ashley, someone I noticed just kind of out of nowhere, seems super active with Clubhouse on TikTok, making some content for the Undroppables. So the Undroppables are actually a group of guys that I've respected since my time started in the fantasy community. I've had Tommy Moe, I've had Beezy, I had some of the older members on the show. Chalk is a guy I've had some nice conversations in the DMs with. So it's a great group that you joined, Ashley. And I think you're giving Tommy Moe a run for his money for the TikTok content. So can you let everybody know, of course, where can we find you on social media, for one? And then for two, just a little bit about yourself, because it seems like you've been fairly new, but super, super active.
Yeah, I know. Me and Tommy need to make a bet on TikTok followers. I'm gonna challenge him to that now. It's a good idea. I'm Ashley. My Twitter handle is actually linked right by my name. I just joined the Undroppables like a month ago. They noticed me after I got accepted into Scott Fish Bowl, and I joined the team kind of as a content creator, working across platforms, just putting out content, especially on TikTok, because we've noticed a lot of the fantasy community move over there, and it's a platform that's amazing for growth. So that's been really great. I'm so lucky to be a part of that group. I can't sing their praises enough and give them all their flowers, because they are seriously incredible. So welcoming. The whole community has been so welcoming. You know, I've been in love with football since I grew up. I grew up with watching Sunday night games with my dad. I'm a Giants fan. So I grew up doing that, kind of started playing fantasy fairly recently compared to everyone else, like 4 years ago. The community has been so accepting, and, there's still some things I don't know. I mean, all of us don't know it all. So everyone's been great. I'm in Scott Fish Bowl for the first time this year. I do a lot on Clubhouse. I work with Regina Wright on Clubhouse. I help co-moderate her room called She Loves Football, which is kind of a space we've created on Clubhouse to talk about all things football, fantasy, news. We even do football trivia. That's a lot of fun. So we have a lot of fun over there, and it's a community open to everyone, but geared towards creating a safe space for women in sports, because we know that in certain spaces it's hard for women to break through and they don't feel comfortable at first. So we want to make sure that everyone's comfortable asking their questions and feeling seen and feeling heard. So that's why she created that space, and I am lucky enough to know her and help her out in that space. And just trying to do my best on Twitter and TikTok, and kind of being all over the place, like you said.
And I think that's awesome. I think having a diverse set of content helps you, just as a content creator, just grow and expand and learn things. I know for myself, and Anthony will attest to this, I went from this weird transition of I'm only doing articles to I want to do a podcast, and now I need to add a microphone, and now I need to add guests, and you just continuously grow and evolve. And I myself try TikTok every now and then as well, and the Clubhouse thing is something I've been involved with too. So all good things there. And I like what you guys are doing on Clubhouse, because I think, again, empowering women in the industry is awesome. It's something I've been a proponent of. My co-host on Thursday, mad respect for her, Steffi Smalls, and there's been
awesome.
so many other, absolutely, so many other women in the industry that have been on this show, and I'm all about that, and just including different people, because I think the more you include people, the more confidence certain people get, and they grow, and you just have to respect that. So I do want to shout out to everybody in the chat room, just people commenting nonstop. So thank you guys for tuning into the show today. Before we get into anything content related for the show, I do want to make sure that I plug Fantasy Points and Fantasy Points Media Group. Again, I say it week in and week out. FantasyPoints.com is a site I use every single day. So when I prepared for this podcast, I used their advanced stats, and I looked at red zone data and things like that. And when I produce content, it's my go-to spot. When I was looking at Scott Fishbowl, who's available, I'm looking at some of their rankings. So definitely check out FantasyPoints.com/subscribe. One-stop shop for all fantasy content. You can use my promo code 21WIN10. So what we have going on today, the three of us are all participating in Scott Fishbowl. We'll talk about that briefly, go over some NFL news, and then we're going to have the bulk of the podcast be about my guys, and we'll explain why we're doing that right after the intro, which is not that one.
Play to win, no fear to give. I feel but I can't forgive. I go all in this time, yeah, I won't regret. I'll pick the best on trip, they don't understand. I play to win, yeah, I play to win, I play to win. Yeah, play to win, I play to win. Oh, play to win, I play to win. Yeah, play to win, I play to win.
All right, so Scott Fishbowl, that's the big talk of the week. Everybody's been super excited. It kicked off on Monday. We'll just go around and just tell us a little bit about your experience so far, how your draft's going, maybe who you got so far in the draft, where your draft is at. We'll start with you, Anthony. How are things going? I know you've talked to me about it, but we'll hear from you for everybody else.
Yeah. So just like Ashley, this is my first year in the Scott Fishbowl, so it's definitely very interesting. I'm looking at the roster here. I know I'm kind of lacking in the tight end position so far. I know that they're flying off the boards, but quarterbacks are flying off the boards early. So I'm actually through, I don't know how many picks you guys are through, but I'm through 4 rounds right now. And I got Lamar Jackson, Jonathan Taylor, Joe Burrow, and A.J. Brown. So I'm definitely not mad at that start. I think I've got some good pieces, 2 good quarterbacks to start with, a good running back and a good receiver. Hopefully I can grab a tight end that's going to be useful. A lot of them are flying off the boards, but definitely not a bad start. Those are a lot of guys that I'm pretty high on for 2021. So hopefully it goes well, and got a couple picks coming up, so we'll see who's on the board when it comes to my turn.
And I like a lot of those picks, just because if you were to do rankings and you looked at, let's look at the quarterback position, let's look at the wide receiver, the running back, most of those guys are going to be towards the top of the list. So you got a nice spread there, I guess, of different positions, but guys at the top. So Ashley, how's your draft going? What's been standing out to you? Just talk to us a little bit about Scott Fishbowl so far.
First thing that stands out is that my group is so far ahead of the pack. We are in the middle of 9 right now.
Oh,
so I think we're
jealous.
second. I think we're second in like speed. I don't think anybody is going to catch My Chemical Romance. They are like, I think done with 10 now. Like that's crazy. But yeah, I started my Scott Fishbowl with a heart attack because I somehow ended up in someone else's group, and I have picked 9. And I don't know if it was like a mock draft that I ended up in or somebody else's group that Mahomes wasn't taken yet. And I didn't have him in my pre-draft, and I knew I was going to sleep in. So I pre-drafted, and I panicked because I pre-drafted Darren Waller, which is a great pick. But I was like, I pre-drafted Darren Waller and Mahomes was still on the board. So after 5 minutes of waking up, I figured out it wasn't my group. Mahomes went 101. So that made me feel a lot better. So my first 5 minutes of Scott Fishbowl were a little bit of a heart attack. But other than that, I'm through 9 picks. It's Darren Waller, Tannehill, Aaron Jones, A.J. Brown, Derek Carr, Cooper Kupp, ETN, Damian Harris, and OBJ.
Nice, nice. I know
Love
Anthony's
that.
a big fan. Anthony's a big fan of a bunch of those guys there, but
Yep.
seems like pretty good value if you go round to round right there. And I'm totally jealous. We're at pick 311, I think, in ours. So ours has kind of been slow. And I think the thing with my group is we tried making a group chat so that we can all just at the person who's next on the clock. But some people we weren't able to add because their DMs are closed, and we've had to kind of knock on people's doors and be annoying and stuff. But yeah, through mine, I took Dak Prescott at the 108. I took Zeke, so I stacked that at the 205. And the reason I did that, those are guys I usually don't roster, but I think just I was playing the board for those two picks, and Zeke kind of kept falling. And then I ended up taking George Kittle in the third. And again, I know Anthony's a big fan of Kittle. I personally have not been as high on him as other people have, but I think for this draft, you kind of just have to play what's going on division and round to round. So not too bad of a start for myself. And it sounds like you guys are off to a good start too. What I like about this
too. You have a stack. I have two stacks. I
you
have
have the,
Darren Waller
Carr,
and Derek Carr and Tannehill and AJ Brown.
Yeah,
I got two, and I didn't even reach for it. It kind of just like fell in my lap. Like AJ Brown at 4, I didn't expect to be there, so I was like, I have to get that one, and it makes it the stack. So that was just like good value that landed in a stack. And getting Carr for my backup quarterback kind of came down to like Baker or Carr, because it was, do I go with Baker, who had a good end of year, or do I go, but I know has had notoriously a lot of interceptions and a lot of incompletions, which would really harm me in this format? Or do I go with someone like Carr, who's more stable in this format, who placed really well in this format? So I ended up going with Carr, and then that gave me the double stack.
And I like playing the format because I talked to Anthony earlier. I was juggling George Kittle or Aaron Jones in the third. I wanted another running back, but then with it being that tight end boost, I just kind of had to play the format. And I like the facts about Derek Carr and Baker Mayfield. I've been not a hater of Baker Mayfield, but I've been pretty hard about Baker. So I probably would have done the same, to be honest. What I like most so about this is like everybody's talking about it and everybody's kind of sharing, you know, I just got this guy. So it definitely is something that brings the fantasy community together. And I think Scott Fish and Ryan McDonald just have to have major props for this whole tournament, and it's all for a great cause. So happy to be part of it. I'm year one, just like you guys. So this has been awesome. This has definitely been awesome. So I don't have tons of NFL news, and I actually just wanted to bring up two things before we get into our My Guys chunk here. But these are two topics I actually brought up in some of the other podcasts. And the reason I bring them up is because they're not like the most controversial, but I've seen so many different opinions on them. So I wanted to make sure that I get a diverse set of stances and opinions on certain things, just so we can see different ways of thinking. So I got two pieces of NFL news that just dropped pretty recent. And the first one comes from the Jaguars, July 2nd, so fairly recent. DJ Chark on 2021 Jaguars, we're going to shock a lot of people. So we've talked about on this podcast a few times when it comes to the Jaguars skill players, so the wide receivers on this team. How interested are we in these wide receivers? Because it seems like a lot of people have shifted around. Here's the primary guy. This guy is secondary. I want this guy. I don't want this guy. So we can start with you, Anthony. When it comes to the Jaguars, let's focus on the wide receivers. Are you super interested in these guys, or are you not interested? What's your stance here? Because it seems like an offense that should be throwing the ball a fair amount of times.
Yeah, I was actually taking a look at their offense in general. In something that stands out to me is how young that they are. Trevor Lawrence is 21 years old. You got Etienne and Robinson as running backs who are both 22 years old. Visca is 22 years old, and then you got Chark, who's 24. Don't get me wrong, in a dynasty that we're both in, I have a share of Chark and Visca. I'm hoping for the best for both of these guys, but I think people need to pump the brakes a little bit on the offense. Looking at the offense as a whole, they're very young. They have a brand new coach. They have to learn an entire new playbook. I'm not expecting them to come out of the gates and be 4-0 or win at a bunch of games right away. I'm a huge Urban Meyer fan. I've always liked Urban Meyer, but we got to see how he adjusts to the NFL, what type of plays he's going to be calling, we really don't know what to expect from this team. I get there's a lot of hype. Trevor Lawrence is a generational quarterback. I get that these guys are young and the sky's the limit. But I'm not going to go in and expect these guys to be top 10 in their position, top 15 in their position, because I kind of do expect a slower start. It's going to take a while to get used to the scheme, to get used to the play calling, and for everybody to figure each other out. So definitely think that the sky's the limit for this group. Great group of young players, but I'm not going to expect massive things from them out of the gate.
Ashley, when it comes to the Jaguars wide receivers, so Anthony's not super into it, says maybe we should he used the phrase pump the brakes a little bit on our expectations for them. Are you super excited about any of these guys or one of these guys, or what's your outlook here?
I mean, the same two players Anthony named, like DJ Chark and Visca, are the two that I have my eye on. But again, it's about managing expectations. I think if you go in there the way that it's starting to shape up, that it looks like people are going in there, that this is going to be the team, right off the bat, we're going to win it all. We're going to go out there and we're going to shock everyone. And I'm sure they will, but I think that that's going to come later in the season. And I think people have to kind of manage their expectations, at least in these first few weeks, and be like, okay, I'm okay if my players, the players I'm supporting, the players I have in fantasy aren't going to do so well because I expect them to do better at the end of the year, rather than saying I'm grabbing someone like Chark or I'm grabbing someone like Visca and I am going to blow all of you out of the water and they're going to get 40 points right off the bat. Because I think it's about that. It's about, you have to have the right idea in your head to consider it success for these guys, because some people are going to consider it success. Like if the way I'm going into it, if I was to get one of these players in a later round that I feel confident in, that would be successful for me. But for them, for people who are grabbing them early and saying it's going to be the best ever, it's not going to be so successful.
Yeah, I like the word expectation. You guys both use that often, and it varies from league to league and person to person. I personally, with Chark, Chenault, and then Marvin Jones Jr. too, who's maybe not as valuable, but these are guys I would expect to plug into a flex spot. I wouldn't expect any of them to be my wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 if I started them on my roster right off the bat. I just feel like I'd be more comfortable flexing these guys. And I think, I'm not a massive ADP guy, because I value things differently, but I look at where are these guys going in drafts. So Chark is this is from Fantasy Pros ADP for redraft, but Chark is going wide receiver 32 right now. So it doesn't seem super high, but it's actually before guys like Devonta Smith, Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, and Jerry Jeudy. And when I look at that list, I like all those guys more. So that to me means if I'm drafting, I'm not really eyeing Chark. Chenault, on the other hand, wide receiver 43. I like him more than Chark personally because of a few things I saw last year when healthy, 5 games, 14-plus fantasy points. He actually carried the ball 18 times. And Urban Meyer, the rumor was that he was trying to draft Kadarius Toney that the Giants took, because I think he always wants that Percy Harvin, looking at his old players, that gadget guy. And I think he might use Chenault in a creative way. So if I can get Chenault later on in the draft, I might be more comfortable, just because I've seen a little bit more upside and a diverse set of use for him. And then Marvin Jones, wide receiver 53 for his ADP. He's going later. So, I mean, if he ends up being the 60th wide receiver, taken in your draft, I think you'd be okay with it, because, last season he was top 20 and we've seen him be pretty decent in fantasy. But I think what all three of us are kind of getting at for these 3 guys is, what's your expectation for them? Are you expecting them to, like Ashley said, put up 40 points every other week or 30 points here in that? Or are you just expecting, hey, this guy can fill in for a bye week in the wide receiver position, or I'm going to flex this guy? So I think we're all pretty much on the same page for the Jaguars. But again, a team that's pretty promising, pretty exciting, and a team that's going to throw the ball a lot. So we're definitely not saying fade these guys, but just temper where your expectations are. Let's see. I had one more piece of news. Something else I've actually talked about often, and another one that was recent. This one dropped the day before the news we just read. So the 2021 NFL season, I can't wait to watch these 9 players returning from injury. So the author of this, Adam Sheen, he brought a handful of guys to the table, And some I brought up on the podcast a few times before. We look at who's going to be the comeback player of the year. So this past season, it was Alex Smith. The award should be named after Alex Smith now because it was such a crazy story. What a great story it was. But this past season, we saw so many guys go down with injuries. We saw Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler missed a bunch of time. You had Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow. There's a lot. Nick Bosa. There's so many big name players this past season that were injured and out for a lot of the year. So I think there's a lot of guys that could be up on that who's going to be the comeback player of the year short list. So for you guys, who is this player that comes to mind? So if I had to say put $5 on a bet for a comeback player of the year in 2021, we'll start with you, Ashley. Who you putting that $5 on?
Well, my way I always sports bet is put it on the long shot, so that's not the right question.
Maybe all right. So to shift it around then. Who would be the best bet? Your best guess?
My best guess is Dak. I think he, even pre-injury, he was putting up some of the best numbers of his life. So I think that if he comes back and can put up similar numbers, but also be able to show he could still move after his leg injury, being able to show he can run, show he can move freely throughout the pocket, that he is kind of a lock for that. I think, I was actually talking about it with someone earlier, and they were talking about how like the narrative kind of is if this team after Dak got hurt is that, this team crumbled without Dak there, right? But if Dak comes back and this team succeeds because of it, it's going to be that Dak came back, Dak brought this team back. And look at what impact he makes on these other players and the team as a whole, the organization. So I think that kind of just shows his overall impact. And I think that kind of, as long as he can put up similar numbers. I mean, if he puts up better numbers, I think he's a lock 100%. But put up similar numbers and still be able to move around freely, move around the pocket. He's a lock for that. And I think that's another one though that I feel like expectations might play in. Because he kind of is already the favorite for that everyone's kind of expecting him to do good. So I think that that's another thing that kind of might hurt him in the long run, that if everyone's kind of expecting him to win this and he doesn't put up these crazy numbers like he was putting up pre-injury, it's going to hurt him, even if they would be decent numbers. But if I had to go with a pick, I have to go with Dak.
I actually wrote down some stats about Dak because he came to mind right away. 9 touchdowns in 5 games played. He played only in 4 full games. He had games with 450, 472, and then 502 passing yards. So this guy was just airing it out nonstop, and he was one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best, during those first 4 or 5 weeks of football. So we did see a big transition of what the Cowboys looked like before and afterwards. I don't think that they were going to be this team that was going to make a massive playoff push or anything like that, in all honesty, but it was a very different offense. And initially I was thinking about guys like, and we'll get to Anthony, Christian McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley. Like, what if one of these two guys opens up the year and finishes the year as the RB1 and they're the best running back in football? At the same time, I think there's a chance that they might not be the entire reason why. Like, they may be a piece to a building puzzle, where Dak, I think, is going to control the entire offense. You see the Panthers have changed. The Giants have changed as well. So they may add to that, but I don't think they'll be the entire focal point of their new offenses. But good points all around. Anthony, who's your guy that comes to mind for potential comeback player of the year for 2021?
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with Ashley on this. I mean, I love Nick Bosa. He's one of my favorite defensive players in the league. I love McCaffrey. I love Saquon. But in the reality of the situation, they're going to treat it like they treat the MVP award. It's going to go to a quarterback at the end of the day. So that kind of limits it to 2 people for me, and it's going to be Burrow or Dak. With Burrow, I mean, I think the sky's the limit. I think he very well could have been challenging Herbert for the Rookie of the Year with his numbers that he was putting up. You add Jamar Chase to that offense, I think he's going to be excellent this year. So the thing that separates me is I was looking at stats, and with Dak, as you already said, he threw for over 450 yards in 3 of 5 games, which is absolutely ridiculous. So I'm looking at Dak's weapons. He's got Amari Cooper. He's got Zeke. He's got Tony Pollard, who's a weapon. He's got Gallup. I think the X factor of that offense this year is going to be CeeDee Lamb. I think he's so dangerous. I think how much he's going to get freed up if they're covering Cooper with their cornerback, the first quarterback of the other team. I think that CeeDee Lamb's going to have a huge season. And if CeeDee Lamb has a huge season, Dak's going to have a huge season. This offense is absolutely stacked. They have everything going for them. Their line's decent. So I think the only thing that could stop Dak from winning that comeback player of the year is turnovers. I was looking at it. He had, I think, 7 turnovers in 5 games, 4 interceptions, 3 fumbles. If he limits that a little bit, gets those numbers a little bit down, he's going to be a league winner this year. If he stays healthy, that offense is going to be very hard to stop on a weekly basis. So if I had to put money on it, it's going to be Dak with Burrow trailing behind a little bit.
I like the Joe Burrow note too, because he's another guy that was airing it out, and they're going to have to again this year because the defense did not add enough to make them like a force or anything like that. And you look at what's on his team. Tyler Boyd with Joe Burrow was the wide receiver 11 during the first 11 weeks of football. We know T. Higgins was a breakout candidate. I think he finished top 30. Then you had Jamar Chase, who led the NCAA in 2019 for receiving yards and was an absolute force. So this is an offense that's going to be explosive. Joe Burrow had high expectations, and I think he's extremely determined. So he's another close guy there. Got some more comments coming in. Oh, the Undroppables. Boom. It's funny. I had to read this one off. We had some comments about the stash during 4th of July. So I had my daughter's birthday. This is a side note. I had my daughter's birthday the one day, and I think Anthony saw the transition. I had like a scruff beard going on. And then I told my wife, I said, hey, for 4th of July, I'm going to shave only a mustache. And it was like super thick. And she said, absolutely not. Don't do it. So I did it. And it ended up that I have to look like I'm 12 again because of this whole process. So that's what the comments from Shotgun, my buddy Colin, are coming from. But that's funny stuff. We're going to transition to the bulk of the show now. So the bulk of the show, I asked these guys. I said, let's keep it simple. Let's talk about my guys. And you see that often on Twitter when people are just tweeting out certain things and they refer to certain players as one of my guys. So my viewpoint for what that actually means, if you haven't really seen that before, it's guys that you may often roster in your fantasy leagues, or it's guys that you really are putting your stamp on, or you see the phrase like I'm dying on this hill. It's guys that you're really just standing behind. So when we refer to my guys, it's people that maybe it's part of your brand. I know there's a handful of guys that I talk about often. I try to talk about as many people as possible, but I think by now people that follow me probably know who my guys are. I'm sure I know Anthony's, he knows mine. So what I asked both Anthony and Ashley were to bring a running back, a wide receiver, and a tight end that you'd consider a my guy. And I said, let's look at people outside the top 25 for consensus ADP rankings, because it's easy to come on the show. Not that you guys would, but it's easy to come on the show and say like, my dude is Patrick Mahomes and like my guy is Christian McCaffrey. So we're not going to dig super, super deep into like 18th round and sleepers or anything like that, but we'll go around the table and we'll start with the running back position. So we'll start with Ashley. So when I say the term my guy, who's a running back that comes to mind for you, and why do you consider him a my guy?
I definitely think one of mine would be Chris Carson. I think that he was listed on our sheet as number 39, so he's out of the 25. Especially in the last few years, I think 2019 he had a little bit of an off year, but last year before he got a little hurt, he had only like 1 fumble and somewhere like in the high 80s of rush attempts. We've seen constant progression from him. So it's year after year getting better and better, even better on the receiving end too. So he is receiving great. He's rushing great. He also gets like a super high, like production level. So he's worked a lot. I think that offense could definitely use him more. I think that they would benefit from that. But I think it's definitely Chris Carson. I think as long as he can't seem to stay healthy, which is a tough thing for fantasy. So if you have a spot that has an IR, or if you have enough bench players to be able to sub him out or flex someone in, I think Chris Carson is a definite my guy for me.
And I feel like Carson is a guy that is constantly kind of undervalued and disrespected, and a lot of guys get these injury tags put on them. But you look at a guy, I mean, the camp pictures are coming out, and he looks like a linebacker. He's scary looking. Like I wouldn't even look this guy in the eye, I don't think. But he's a guy that some people had concerns with Rashad Penny in the past, and that's really just never turned into a big issue. And then you look at the other guys on the roster, like DJ Dallas and the other running back there. It's not a big issue for, there being some sort of running back by committee there. And I think Chris Carson has actually progressed as a pass catcher, and he's a strong runner, and he runs super physical. So I think he's a guy that if you looked at where he's being ranked or where his ADP is, it kind of is being pushed farther and farther at times because some of these younger running backs, the Cam Akers, the Antonio Gibsons of the world, are so shiny right now, and we forget about Chris Carson and what he can do when he's healthy. So durability may be a concern, but at the same time, if this guy is healthy, this offense wants to give him the ball. Pete Carroll wants to give Chris Carson the ball. So I like that there.
He's one of those ones, like you said, shiny. Like you can't constantly fall into the trap of picking the shiny guys because, I mean, like, look at them. They miss weeks too. And just because Chris Carson isn't shiny, they place an injury tag on him just because he misses just as many weeks as the shiny guys do. So I think that people have to remember not to fall into that trap of picking the shiny people. And I think that's huge with Scott Fishbowl too. I mean, we were talking about that earlier. The shiny people seem enticing, but in the long run, they're not always the best option. So I think, going further outside of those shiny people and looking for someone like a Chris Carson is a great bet for a good value.
I completely agree. And I'm going to put you on the spot. And it's like a question for a league I'm in, and Anthony's in this league too. Mm-hmm. I was asked before, is Chris Carson in Dynasty? Do you think? And if you don't have a strong opinion, that's fine, because I personally don't right now. But do you think in a Dynasty for a contender, do you think he's worth a first if it's a late first? I've been juggling this, so it's tough because I've heard a lot of different opinions. Some people say if you're a contender, absolutely, and then somebody else is like, a first can turn into something else. Like there's been a lot of back and forths.
I think I would probably push it off to an early second. I think that would be more so. I think just makes a little bit of a distinction. As much as we said injury tags don't affect a player, I think with a first, you have to go for a player that's going to constantly be healthy, and to run the risk with Carson might be a little bit risky, but I think an early second would be a great value for him.
Anthony, any quick thoughts on Chris Carson, and then let's hear who your running back, my guy, is.
Yeah, I definitely like the Carson take. In the league that Nick was just talking about, me and him both consider ourselves pretty strong contenders in that league. Mm-hmm. So I don't blame the guy. I mean, I tried trading for Carson too, because Carson's the guy that you want on a win-now team. He's going to give you good weeks for good value. So I don't blame him for setting the price tag at a first-round pick, because he knows that if he trades him to one of us, that's going to boost our team a lot. But I don't think either of us are willing to pay that right now. Yeah. I actually traded my first-round pick in that league for somebody I'll talk about in a little bit, which might have been a questionable decision, but definitely like the Carson take for sure.
And who is my guy for the running back position?
So my guy, Chicago Bears fan here, super slept on in my opinion, doesn't get any respect, but my guy is going to be David Montgomery. Looking at David Montgomery last year, he finished RB4. RB4 is, you would think in a dynasty league, any type of league, the guy finishes RB4, you're going to get some decent value for him. Nobody wants David Montgomery. Nobody's trying to trade for David Montgomery. Nobody's trying to sell David Montgomery. He's just a guy that if he's on your team, great type of thing. He is very productive. I think that the Bears offense is only going to get better. And I saw the video, I'm sure you guys did, of him recently where he was at practice and he's talking to Coach Nagy and he's like, let's put on the pads. And Nagy's like, we can't do that. And he's like, I'm trying to show everybody. He's like, CBS Sports said I'm outside of the top 15 running backs or whatever it is. And he's like, I'm going to prove everybody wrong. And that's the attitude that I really love seeing from a running back. And David Montgomery is very young. He was drafted the same year that Miles Sanders and Josh Jacobs did. And David Montgomery is somebody who I think, especially when Justin Fields takes over that offense, is going to have good value in somebody who has borderline RB1 weeks pretty frequently. So he's my guy. If I could get him, I'm going to get him. And if I have him, I'm definitely not selling him at this point.
And I think there's been a lot of polarizing opinions on David Montgomery, because I think the people that saw him break out still think he has those abilities. And then you have some people that are overly worried about, what this offense is going to look like in 2021. Tariq Cohen coming back, big pass catcher, but at the same time, David Montgomery was a good pass catcher in college. And when a guy breaks out and he does that well, I don't think you just say, hey, you did this good when Cohen was gone last year, but we're just going to take all the pass catching chances away from you. I don't think that's really going to be the case. Damian Williams, we've seen him be good on a great offense. I mean, I feel like other running backs would be pretty good on that offense. So I'm not taking away anything from Damian Williams, but at the same time, I don't see him being a massive threat. I personally don't have Dave Montgomery as a top 12 guy, but I still think he's going to carry some good value next season. And again, if people are super concerned in your league about Tariq Cohen coming back, then they probably shouldn't be rostering Dave Montgomery, in my opinion. Ashley, do you have any strong opinions on Dave Montgomery?
No, I love the chip on the shoulder, have something to prove thing. I think for running backs, that works really well. I think in other positions, it kind of gets a little bit tricky, but I think for running backs, that having that, I have something to prove and don't count me out just yet, will play really well for him.
And I like the point you just made, because you said for other positions it gets tricky, because I don't think they're in as much control on what they do. Because if a wide receiver is running routes and he's not getting targeted, I mean, he's not in a ton of control. But when you hand the ball off to a running back 15, 16 times a game and then give them a couple passes, they're in a lot more control than a tight end or a wide receiver. So that's a point I haven't really thought too much about.
Yeah, I mean, even think of quarterback too. When we've seen quarterbacks get chips on their shoulders and it gets into interceptions and incompletions, and that's when it's I have something to prove. I'm going to throw it halfway down the field and I'm going to get a pick six. And so something like that doesn't really work. It's same with wide receiver. You're running a riskier route that turns up into an interception, or you're trying something that you normally wouldn't because you have something to prove. Whereas a running back is kind of just an out there workhorse, I'm going to do what I'm going to do and get out of my way. And it doesn't really put much more in danger.
Yep, I completely agree there. My guy on brand, as Anthony knows, and he wasn't super far off from that top 25, but I always got to speak on him. My guy, another guy that some people are out on because of the state of his offense, but I am not at all. Deandre Swift. So Deandre Swift's ADP is RB16, and I think that's unfair because I have him much, much higher. The guy out of Georgia did everything. I mean, he had 2,885 rushing yards and 73 catches. He was a do-it-all running back, and we don't see that as often in the NFL anymore. RB18 in 2020, despite the limited touches early on. He earned his time later on, but he had some big weeks in 2020 when he did get some volume. Week 6, he was the RB3 that week. Week 10, he was the RB4 that week. Week 15, he was the RB10, so just a few examples there. Top 10 for running backs in yards per reception. He caught 80% of his targets. So literally when the guy was given opportunities, he did well on both the running and the passing opportunities. The red zone too, 19 attempts in the red zone for 8 touchdowns. So that means on 42.1% of his carries in the red zone, he scored, which is crazy. I'm not going to say he's going to hold on to that level and hold on to that efficiency because it's probably not attainable, but we've just seen him do so well with his volume. They added Penei Sewell, great offensive lineman. He slipped in the draft. They actually have a good offensive line besides that. So I know a lot of people are concerned about the Lions not being good, and I hate when people bring up the past Lions running backs because none of them were Deandre Swift, and he was none of them. That's a weird comparison to me all the time. But I think this is going to be a team that targets him probably top 5. And I'm going to call that out there. I think he's going to be a top 5 targeted running back just because there's not a ton of alpha pass catchers in this offense, and he is a good pass catcher. And I think when you have a good offensive line, when you do have the running abilities, if he was so efficient before, I think he's going to be efficient as well. So, when you look for a guy that does everything, there's not a ton of those guys in the league. And if you were a Aaron Jones manager this past season, if Jamal Williams didn't scare you, then he should not scare DeAndre Swift managers either, because he's a guy that will get 7, 8 touches total, maybe a game. So I'm not super concerned. You guys have any quick thoughts on DeAndre Swift before we move to the wide receiver?
Yeah, I love Swift. I'm completely on board with Swift. I think that the addition of Sewell, I mean, you saw that draft room when Sewell fell to them. Those Lions coaches love him. They're clearly going to use him the right way. When they were going crazy like that for Sewell, I thought they were taking Justin Fields. So I was like, wow, they're going to take Fields from us, but they drafted Sewell. So clearly they're super excited for him. I think he's going to help out Swift a lot. And I wish I could have a share of Swift in any of my fantasy leagues, but you're in most of my fantasy leagues, so I know that I won't be able to get any Swift shares. So definitely like Swift.
Actually, are you kind of on board, or are you not really as high on DeAndre Swift?
I think I'm a little bit lower than you are, but I am on board. Like, I'm not gonna miss this train. I can see him doing really well, and I like Anthony just said, I mean, if that draft room doesn't tell you that they're going to use Sewell in the right way to get this done, then I don't know what will.
That was so crazy, though. That was so crazy to seeing them like literally fist bumping and high fiving and like throwing stuff for him. So, that was a massive part of the plan there. And I think that gets linked to protecting the quarterback for one, and then opening up lanes for your running back. So let's shift over to the wide receiver position. Again, talking my guys, who's a guy you consider a my guy for the wide receiver position, which kind of gets tough because if you play in a bunch of leagues, there's so many wide receivers. So it's tough to be like, this one guy is my guy, but what's one guy that comes to mind? And we can start with, we'll start with you, Ashley, on this one.
Sure. I really didn't have to do too much digging for this one. Mine is Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp has my heart. On our list, who's number 54.
Actually, not to cut you off, I think you might have sniped Anthony on this one. But
did I?
It was good. It's good. It's good. You keep going, though.
You take the floor on this.
Listen, at least I got called first. I would have had nothing to talk about after.
You've been like, my connection is lost. No.
Yeah, seriously. But no, Cooper Kupp is my guy. Last year didn't scare me away either. Like I said, I took him in Scott Fishbowl this year. I plan on taking him elsewhere. If you're my league mates, don't listen. But I still plan on taking him. I think with Stafford there now, that this is just going to be electric. I think that's the best way to describe it. I think him and Goff didn't really work out as well. And with that kind of invisible knee injury, I don't think they ever disclosed what it was, but he was having a lot of issues with his knee. So I think after a months off with rehab to fix that knee and having Stafford in there, that it is going to be absolutely crazy. I mean, his reception to target rate is incredible. He's so fun to watch, which is what makes it fun for fantasy too, is that I want players on my team that I can enjoy watching and not have to sweat it out in the last minutes of the game and have to worry about what they're doing. It's like with Cooper Kupp, I am at least having a good time watching him play. So he is a definite my guy.
And I'll let Anthony jump in. I'm not, I talk smack to Anthony about pretty much everything in life because we talk every day, but I'm not totally against Cooper Kupp because I feel like you see what Sean McVay is saying right now. He's like talking about Stafford, saying he's a bad man and all this stuff. And I think that's awesome for a coach to be talking about his quarterback like that. But, I'm more high on Robert Woods, but you see offenses that can support two potential top 20 wide receivers, and this is going to be one. So I give Anthony crap all the time about Cooper Kupp, but don't hate that call at all because this offense, like you said, is going to be great. Matt Stafford is not going to be a game manager. Matt Stafford is going to his new home, and he's going to air it out, and he's going to be a baller and a potential dark horse MVP. So, Anthony, I'll let you continue on the Cooper Kupp train here.
Yep, that's exactly who I was going to talk about, Ashley, and I was actually going to say don't judge me on this, but I traded a 2022 first-round pick for plus something small for Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham Jr., and I'm all in on Cooper Kupp.
No, it was Crowder. It was Crowder.
It was Crowder. But I traded for Cooper Kupp and Crowder for a first-round pick. I'm all in on Cooper Kupp this year. Looking at him over the last 2 seasons, 2 seasons ago, he had 94 receptions and he had 10 touchdowns, which is huge. And then last year, he actually had 92 receptions, but he only had 3 touchdowns, which was a major downfall for him this year. He also played in only 15 games and got 92 receptions. Looking at him with Matthew Stafford this year, I'm expecting huge things from him. I think that touchdown number is going to go up again this year. I think that receptions number is going to go up. I think that connection is going to be disgusting this year, and I am all in on Cooper Kupp. Sky's the limit for him with Stafford. I think Stafford's a huge upgrade for Goff. You could tell how much they paid for him with Goff plus those picks. I think that they are all in it, and they're in it to win it this year. And I think Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, I think they're all going to be huge beneficiaries of Stafford. And I'm glad Stafford's out of the NFC North now. And I think like Kupp's going to be borderline top 10, 15 for me. And I think that he's fully capable of being the wide receiver 1 on that team. I know Ben popped in from the Scottish Bowl division here. Don't listen to that. I know we're both coming up here, so don't take him from me. But love Cooper Kupp. That was also my guy, so it's funny that you did say that.
And Cooper Kupp lost his like best friend. So I think he's gonna try to prove that, hey, my old roommate and Jared Goff, I can do it without him. Because I know some people have brought up that how close those two were off the field. My guy is way down the list. Anthony knows about this guy. I talk about him all the time. It's a guy he cannot get a hold of in any draft that we're both in because I've grabbed him in every draft. And I know people have rookie fever and it's a thing, but if you look this past season, how many of those guys took a massive jump for the wide receiver position in Dynasty? If you just go down the list of the CeeDee Lambs and the T. Higgins and the Claypools and all those guys. So I'll have my rookie fever, and I'm sticking with my guy Elijah Moore. So Elijah Moore, 34th overall to the Jets. I know the organization's building, but I think he's going to be a massive part of it. This man had A.J. Brown crying, which says a lot right there because A.J. Brown is a superstar, and he was crying that he got drafted so high, and he was so happy for him. Profiles as a slot guy, super quick separation. But if you look at the highlights, which a lot of people don't realize, you look at some of the highlights that like on YouTube, he's going deep and vertical at times too. So some people are worried about Jameson Crowder still being there. Elijah Moore literally can do everything. He's very, very talented. He's very tough with the ball in his hands. He's a playmaker. I'm super excited about him. 9 games, he had 86 catches and 1,193 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns. So he was doing crazy things in college. He played on the same field as A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf in 2018, had more receptions than DK Metcalf. PFF has him as the 2nd highest graded wide receiver in this class. So I know a lot of us give PFF crap about stuff, but they actually do a lot of evaluations, and sometimes the grades can be somewhat accurate. So I love to see that too. Wilson and Elijah Moore, nonstop highlights from camp. They're talking about each other. I think there is a true possibility that Elijah Moore finishes the season, and I'm going to be bold, as the most targeted player. Will he have the most fantasy points or receiving yards on this team? I'm not necessarily saying that, but if you said he finished the season with 100 plus targets or 115 targets, I wouldn't be surprised. I think he's very talented. And when a team is guided by a rookie quarterback and a new coaching staff, the opportunity is key. Corey Davis is a good player. Jamison Crowder, they have Denzel Mims, Keelan Cole. None of those guys to me stand out as an alpha. Elijah Moore, could he be? I think he could be. And again, this is a guy that is going like way at the end in redrafts. I think he's like wide receiver like 61 or something like that. We saw last year T. Higgins and Chase Claypool both finished as top 30 guys, and they were way down the list in redraft. So I think he has a true opportunity to be one of those guys. He's not Devonta Smith. He's not Jamar Chase, just like Chase Claypool was not CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy, but they can be very valuable. So Anthony, I know you like Elijah Moore. Ashley, do you have any strong thoughts on Elijah Moore? I know he's not like the number 1 or number 2 guy, but he's definitely my guy.
Yeah, well, when you said you had rookie fever for someone down low, I thought you were going to steal my underdog. I mean, he's not really underdog anymore with how much everyone's talking about him. But when you said rookie fever, I thought you were going Rashad Bateman there, and that's who my low guy is. If I have rookie fever, I think he's great for dynasty. I think he has a great potential there. But when you said rookie fever, I thought you were going to say it.
It's funny though with Rashad Bateman. Before we move on. People are so worried about the team he landed on, and I think again, this is a guy that could be the most targeted guy on the team. I know, Anthony, I know you like Marquise Brown, but I think he complements Marquise Brown, right? He's not the short, small speedster that he is. And a lot of people are worried about Lamar Jackson being with Rashad Bateman, even though his MVP season, he led the league in touchdowns in the air. So Rashad Bateman, I actually got him in a dynasty rookie draft. I took Elijah Moore too early at the end of the first. And then around the second, Rashad Bateman was going, which I thought was insane for a rookie draft. So I'm with you, Ashley. I think he's a great value as well. Anthony, any quick thoughts before we finish up on the tight ends here?
Yeah, I'm actually like a quiet Jets fan. I don't really talk about it too much, but kind of frustrating that I also have zero shares of Elijah Moore because Nick needs to grab him earlier than anybody else would ever grab him in drafts, which is fine to get your guy and everything. So he's not lying about him being his guy. I love Elijah Moore. I think he's going to be a stud in the NFL. You talked about the Wilson connection. He said that Elijah Moore is somebody who wants to be great, and that's who I want to surround myself with. So I think both of them are going to have a great repertoire together. I think that they're going to be a dynamic duo years down the line. And Bateman, I do like Hollywood, but they need another weapon in that offense. You got Andrews, you got Hollywood. Who's the other guy that's going to step up? I think he has a clear path to get good target share. And both of those guys are two guys that I think will have good value in dynasties, and are both are guys that are probably getting drafted a little bit lower than they should be. And we'll see that after the year happens.
Anthony, all I'm hearing with him stealing your stock is that you just got to go play fantasy somewhere else. He keeps stealing all the good stock.
I know. And then the next guy he's going to talk about is I have zero shares of because of him. It
is what it is, and we don't like people. At first will be in leagues with us, be like, oh, they're going to finesse the league because they're brothers. And me and him, like, will not trade because we don't see eye to eye on, like, anything. But, yeah, that's funny. That's funny. We'll whip through the tight end just because we try to keep it to an hour here. I'll spit out mine super fast as I'm, like, half losing my voice here. But I got Pitts on the back wall, but I'm not going to go through him because everybody, their mother, their grandma, and their aunts talk about Kyle Pitts, so I'll leave that alone. But a lot of people faded Hunter Henry because he went to the same team Jonnu Smith went to. I really don't mind Hunter Henry at all, and I think that this offense doesn't have a lot of good wide receivers with the Patriots. I think that this offense is going to be very managed as far as getting the ball methodically down the field, even if it's Cam Newton or Mac Jones. I think having two tight ends on the field probably every single play will mean that Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry will get plenty of action. I like Hunter Henry personally more because I've seen him do good things. Tight end 12 this year, tight end 9 the year before. Jonnu Smith was tight end 16 and then tight end 20 the past 2 years. So I know he offers something different, but I like what I've seen out of Hunter Henry. And, you see pictures of Bill Belichick hugging him, and I'm pretty sure he gave him a kiss on the cheek and was patting him on the back. So he really likes this guy. He's going to use this guy. So in a world where people faded Hunter Henry, I think he's on an offense that doesn't have wide receivers, isn't going to use him. So that's my like 15, 20 second spiel on my guy. Anthony, let's go into your tight end.
See, I thought you were going to definitely say Pitts there, so that's a little surprising. For me,
I can't go 2 rookies in a row. People are going to say that I'm just all about the fever.
So for me, this is going to be another Bears guy for me, but Cole Komet, I think right now he's kind of people think he has high potential, but they're not going to overpay for him. He's somebody that I think generally everybody thinks that he has good potential as a tight end. I think that realistically he has a chance to be the number 2 targeted guy on the Bears offense this year. I know a lot of people like Darnell Mooney. I don't like Anthony Miller, but I think Cole Komet, he's going to overtake Jimmy Graham. I know that they re-signed Jimmy Graham, but for me, I think that there's no comparison between the two. And I saw these videos of Cole Komet at Tight End University hanging out with George Kittle. Those two seem pretty buddy together at that. So that's a great sign for me if he's learning from the best. So I'm excited to see what he can do. Maybe he doesn't break out right away, but maybe Jimmy Graham starts a little bit earlier in the season. But I do think at some point this season, Cole Komet takes over the tight end spot, and he has pretty good value going forward.
Yeah, Comet, at the end of the season, he took the keys because you look at the target share and he was getting like 7, 6, 5 targets the last handful of weeks. So he definitely took the keys over. Jimmy Graham might be annoying in the end zone. I think if the touchdowns go up and the actual yards after the catch go up for Comet, I think he's got some good value because, again, we don't have like clear set wide receiver two. I mean, it's Mooney, but I don't think it's as clear as like Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. I think there's still opportunity there. So Ashley, any quick thoughts on those two guys? And then let's finish off with who your my guy is for the tight end position.
Yeah, my thoughts on Hunter Henry. I think that it doesn't scare me with where he ended up. I think that the Patriots are very good at running to tight end. They've been doing that for years. They kind of pioneered that. They were so good with it. They changed the game with that. And I think that doesn't scare me. I think that they'll kind of split receptions. I think Hunter Henry is at an advantage to get the better end of the stick on that deal. But yeah, and my pick was an easy one. Number 51 on the list, I went with Mark Andrews. I had to do it. He is like one of the best blockers at that position. When they look at his blocks, when they look at his plays, he's like 88 something for his PFF grade, which puts him at like number 2 overall for the position. I kind of see him as the end of that top tier of tight ends, where it's like Kelsey, Waller, Kittle, Andrews kind of at the bottom of that tier, if not at the beginning of the next tier. He was like ninth in receptions. So I think that he is very good at all aspects of the game. He's great in the red zone. So yeah, that was kind of an easy one for me.
And I think with Andrews, I think we regard him as a top tight end, but I think, again, in a world where Kyle Pitts is this new thing and a lot of people expect TJ Hawkinson to be massive this year and people are now pushing Waller up to tight end 2 for some rankings, I think Andrews at times is that forgotten guy when he's been the go-to guy, even for a team that's added some wide receivers to Lamar Jackson. So, yeah, I think he often does get kind of forgotten, and he'll have those weeks where he doesn't get the best finish, but then he'll also have those weeks where he scores 2 touchdowns and he probably wins you your week. So, Anthony, fan of Andrews?
Yeah, I think he's pretty slept on. I think when you look at the Ravens offense, everybody wants to fade their receivers because Lamar Jackson's not the best thrower. He likes to run the ball, but Andrews is their red zone target. He's their biggest receiving option on the team. So whenever he needs a first down, whenever he's looking for a red zone throw, that's who he's going to be looking for. So Hollywood Small, you got Bateman now. Neither of those guys are going to bring what Andrews brings to the table, and that's a big target that's going to get yards, that's going to get red zone looks. So he's kind of a lock for me to be a top tight end this year.
All right, well, that'll wrap up the My Guys podcast. And again, the reason we do this time to time is because a lot of us talk about players often, but I'm sure analyst to analyst or just fan to fan, we all have those sets of guys that we consider my guys that you often try to get in your drafts or you regard higher than some other people maybe in your leagues or in the community. So thank you guys so much for both coming on the show. I know it was like semi-short notice, so I'm glad we got this together because it was a long weekend. Everybody was busy. I want to make sure we remind everybody where to find you guys because this will be on iTunes and Spotify, so they won't be able to see the actual Twitter handles. So, Anthony, anything you want to close out to say, and then let everybody know where to find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Anthony P2W. Hopefully, I'm going to start getting more active with you guys. Maybe you'll see me on the podcast more if Nick will have me, but
we'll see.
Find me at Anthony P2W on Twitter.
All right. And Ashley, again, thanks for joining us. Where can we find you and anything else you want to plug that you got coming up?
No, thank you so much for having me. Like you said, I'm kind of around everywhere. So my Twitter handle is Ashley_Marie with 2 A's at the beginning. If you want to join us on Clubhouse, that's ASHGUAR, and I can show you our little football groups we have on Clubhouse. And I guess I can plug the TikTok at the Undroppables, and that is some of my favorite work. Honestly, I love the TikTok. So yeah, follow me there. Keep up with us. I know I and the Undroppables have some amazing things on the horizons. Nothing I want to spill yet, but it's going to be a great year.
Awesome. Yeah. And as I've said at the beginning of the episode, always been a fan and had good relationships with the Undroppables. So great team you joined there. Been a fan of the TikToks. Happy to see you involved with Clubhouse. And yeah, it's definitely up and coming content creator. So thank you for joining us today. You can catch me on Thursday with Steffi Smalls for our weekly Script 2 Ships episode. We'll be talking about something that we'll figure out within the next day or so. But catch us sometime between either 6 or 7 on Thursday, and then I'll be plugging in some random content throughout the week in between. So for those of you who joined us live and listen, really appreciate that. Thank you to everybody in the comments as well. And then if you listen later on iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, wherever else you listen to podcasts, appreciate that too. Drop us a comment once it's posted. And everybody else, have a great night.